The Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman, came to Washington this week. As far as you know, what was his agenda?
Well, just the arrival and the welcoming ceremony already has been a great success for the Crown Prince to be welcomed in an unprecedented way to the White House with this military band, military on horseback, escorting him into the White House in the flyover. The president personally walking him through already shows both the respect that the president has for him and the partnership that the United States is demonstrating with the kingdom. Under Vision 2030, the Crown Prince has put a priority on diversifying the economy. This year, for the first time ever, 55% of GDP actually comes from the non-oil sector. So as they look to attract data centers, for example, they just don't want to be host to them. They want to build out a whole infrastructure around data centers to be an electricity and cheap energy supplier, to building out the whole AI network, to attracting AI networks, to being the world's leader in e-games. One of the benefits that Saudi Arabia has is obviously it's one of the largest countries in the Middle East, and so they can provide space for manufacturing data centers to provide that technology. There's low-cost energy for building up the AI infrastructure, so they've been in discussions to build out their own AI infrastructure. They have their own domestic champions that they're building out, like Humane, but also they're looking to be the esports and e-gaming capital of the world. And so they spent a lot building out that infrastructure, in part because they have such a young population, but also it's an opportunity for them to show their own technological capabilities.
Saudi Arabia is a wealthy country. At the same time, maybe not quite as wealthy as it was before, because the price of oil is somewhat suppressed. That's where it gets a lot of its revenue from. Does it have to cut back at all on its investment ambitions, given where its fiscal situation is?
Well, that's an excellent point, and clearly their revenues are still highly dependent on the price of oil. And we have seen a cutback in recent years on some of the mega projects. So we've seen that in the case of NEOM, where they've cut back on the grand ambitions and slimmed down the project, but also then focused in on other things like the Saudi Expo, where they are putting a lot of money and capital into that project. I think they're also being smarter about how they're spending their money. Originally, they brought in a lot of outside consultants and spent millions and millions of dollars on plans and strategies and ideas of how to build or how to make these mega projects successful. They're not so dependent on those outside consultants anymore. We've seen really a move to much more specialty insights that they're seeking from outside experts and taking a lot on themselves.
The Crown Prince, as you say, set out a very ambitious agenda for 2030. Do they have enough of a track record yet to know whether they're on track for where they need to get to?
So Vision 2030 was a very ambitious all-of-nation plan, one of the most ambitious transformations in the world, and it was a very aggressive timeline. When we look at some of the indicators, for example, attracting foreign investment, what they've had to do is transform their regulatory structure. That, even though it is moving forward, they've been able to streamline a lot of the regulations. They've opened up sectors to 100% ownership by foreign firms.
It's not one-sided. Western investors are responding to the friendlier tone and are at least dipping their toes into the kingdom. In the past year, tech companies like Tesla and Scale AI have moved operations and offices there. Stephen Cook of the Council on Foreign Relations says Saudi Arabia is opening up with some limits.
Saudi Arabia is now open for business. Of course, there are restrictions. This is Saudi Arabia, after all. But the Saudis are interested in bringing the world to Saudi Arabia. They look at its location. They see it as an important center for culture, sports, tourism, technology, and logistics. I think the Saudis are kind of opening the door to all of these companies who have expressed a tremendous amount of interest in coming to Saudi Arabia. But there is issues related to kind of, from what I understand, related to what the Treasury Department and what the Commerce Department will allow a company like Google or Apple to do in a place like Saudi Arabia.
What about countries other than the United States as possible investors? You're seeing, for example, from Europe.
Yeah, you're seeing general interest in the quote-unquote new Saudi Arabia. Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, his mantra has been to make Saudi Arabia a normal country. Now, he is not a Democrat. He's not a liberal. This is all top-down reform. But I think what he sees is most Saudis are 18 to 50 years old. And if you're going to make your country prosperous and you're going to want to have that cohort staying there and making their lives there. And so he's been inviting investment from all over the world into the kingdom so that people can work and live and enjoy their lives like they would if they were in the United States or Europe.
One of the areas of potential investment is real estate, commercial and residential. What is the level of investment in real estate right now going on in Riyadh, in Jeddah?
Well, I mean, the only way to really answer this, David, is to say that the most oft-cited bird in Saudi Arabia, especially in those two cities, is the construction crane. I mean, I don't think there are enough construction cranes in Saudi Arabia to satisfy all the building that is going on. They've had to bring them in from other places.
In terms of real estate, who's doing the investing in all this construction with all these cranes you talk about? Where's that money coming from?
Well, a lot of this is driven by the government, but they've encouraged private firms to engage in the development of cities and so on and so forth. So there are authorities that the government has established that have partnered with private firms in terms of the development in Jeddah, of the old city, and the development of hotels there and tourist attractions there. But a lot of this is top-down driven by the government.
But there is private money coming in. We've heard about Trump developments in both Jeddah and Riyadh. Adam Newman has a flow project in Riyadh as well. That's private money going in, and do they partner with Saudi entities? How does that work?
Well, yeah, so there has been a recent change in how foreigners can invest in real estate. It's in certain areas, and it has to be in partnership with a Saudi entity. But it is less restrictive than it was, where previously it was much, much harder for foreigners to invest in real estate in Saudi Arabia.
Right now, AI is all the rage, right? In the United States and elsewhere. There's a lot of concern about maybe a bubble, over-investing in AI. Is there a danger of over-investing in, for example, real estate in Saudi Arabia? Absolutely.
I mean, I think that that's certainly the case. Again, there is a build it and they will come aspect to what they're doing. The Saudis, when you press them on this, will say that they've done the hard work and know that there's demand for all of this. But if you just look at the scale of the projects that they're doing, they're not even called mega projects, they're giga projects. They're enormous, $1 trillion bet on a country. You have to wonder whether the demand and supply will come together on this. And again, we've seen this before, where the Saudis have, had this grand vision for new cities and so on and so on, and they've never come to fruition. Look, NEOM, which is something that the Crown Prince has talked a lot about. In many ways, it's his baby. They've had to scale that back over and over and over again. Part of it is engineering and the idea that what he envisions it is extremely difficult to do. But at the other end of it is just putting a city down in a place where one didn't exist before. Not only has engineering challenges, but you have to wonder, if there wasn't a city there before, why would there need to be a city there now? So it's those kinds of flights of fancy that I think people need to be worried about when it comes to Saudi Arabia.